the M&S cyberattack. Now, many of you will be aware that this has been ongoing for at least 7 days now. Obviously, the public has very few details about what's actually going on. The strong suspicion, and the opinion of many cybersecurity experts, of course, is this is an attack on their core IT infrastructure due to the kind of things that are being reported, and very likely to be a large-scale malware infection of some sort, and probably with associated ransomware attack as well. So very serious for them, of course. Today, there was an update from them saying, please don't shop online, but please do come back to the shops and shop. The shops are open, but we can't do anything online. So, I mean, thank goodness they didn't shut their shops after the pandemic and kept the shops open. But in terms of the scale of this attack, it's extraordinary to be for such a sort of important entity taken out for that length of time. So, coming to you first, Nathan, and obviously as the global signal exchange, we process a lot of malware data. Do you think we're seeing an increase in malware and ransomware in general at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the data that we have as part of the GSE shows an increase in, a lot of areas of abuse online. Malware is no exception to that. And in fact, just researching around ransomware attacks itself this year, there's a report that says that there's been an increase of 149% year over year, just for the first 5 weeks of this year, with 378 reported incidents this year, compared to from the same time in 2024, only 152. So there is a real ransomware uptake. Yeah. And as you rightly say, as a GSE, we see, increases in malware being rolled out and people being affected by those quite substantially.
Yeah, so it's a really serious problem. I think we also published a report recently on the growth of malware generally, and it's significantly on the rise. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, obviously the ransomware link is obviously more serious, and I think the potential cost to these big entities is very concerning. And from your perspective, Chris, as someone who manages corporate infrastructure, I mean, how big a threat do you see malware for your organisation? And do you think it's getting worse, or how's it feeling for you?
Yeah, it's certainly something which is well established as just a really important base cost of doing business is to be well protected. Especially, I suppose, made more difficult by some aspects of the architecture and building construction industry is that we deal with really massive amounts of data. So what that means is you just have to multiply everything up so your usual backup processes now suddenly become really difficult and onerous because you're not just backing up your Word documents and your Excel spreadsheets for your financial data, you're backing up a project archive that might be multiple terabytes for a single project. And then you've got a history of that, which you keep for a legal compliance reason. Yeah. And then, very, very quickly, you're talking about archives of hundreds of terabytes in size that for a small organization, the cost becomes quite prohibitive. So we have to balance that. But generally speaking, there's a risk profile that you have to take, which is kind of, we think of it a bit like a Swiss cheese approach.
Yeah.
So we say no single point of protection is going to be the one thing, but we put as many layers in as we can. Yeah. But then also, I suppose, one of the difficulties is if you take a financial risk approach, anyone can convince you that the financial downside of a cyber attack is effectively infinite.
Yeah.
And that effective infinite risk actually doesn't help you quantify how much money you should spend on your cybersecurity. No. In fact, if you just took it like a traditional risk approach, you would spend your entire turnover protecting your organization. Yeah. And so at some point, you have to kind of start to do what we've done, which is prioritize people over systems and processes. So that a really important thing is kind of personnel awareness and training and people being aware of the kind of threats that are coming through. And that's become part of our onboarding. It's become, a regular thing. No more or less than any other company would have. But yeah, it's something that we're constantly aware of. And
And I think it seems like the right approach. I mean, most often these malware attacks are initiated by a human, usually by opening something they shouldn't open. So that human education is, of course, the most important to stop the thing from coming in the first place. And as you say, when you're not unlimited in resources, you have to then think about what you can do downstream from that technically that's actually going to make a difference.
We review most things every year to say, hey, well, we've invested in this system, but actually we might think about taking money away from a system and putting it into training if we thought that would get a better return. Because there's only so much money to go around, and exactly. It's difficult for every company, really, especially if you don't have a really strong understanding of cybersecurity within the organization. You know, you're not big enough to hire a CSO. Well, what are you going to do? You have to rely on third parties.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, very interesting, and hopefully we'll be monitoring that in particular incident. Hopefully by the time we meet next week, it will be done and dusted at their end. On with our program to the Room 101.